Also included in this book is a short story. It's a bonus story called Naked. And before I included this story, I actually sent it to my sisters and my brother to read. Because this story is dedicated to our mother. And I'm not going to read you the whole story. Well, actually, would you like me to read you the whole story? It's only like 4 pages long.
Sure.
Okay, one person wants to hear the story.
We have all night.
Okay, it's dedicated to my mother, Daphne Klepper, here in body but not in mind, and to all those lives that have been changed by a family member living with Alzheimer's or dementia. We live for the good days. Cherish your memories. The title represents the state of our loved ones. With so little memory left and dwindling abilities to care for themselves, they may as well be naked. And it's called Naked. In the cool of the morning, with the mist rising over the swamps, Delia ran. She ran through meadows covered in wild spring flowers, resplendent with bright colors, orange, red, white, and purple, like the wild flowers that framed the lone highway leading to her next adventure. She ran past the cascade she had grown accustomed to, and down the steep hill where the country buses drove daily, laden with market goods and chattering ladies, school children in white and blue tunics, and working men. Delia had been running her entire life. She had brought herself up from the sleepy little village in Jamaica where her mother gave her life, and had gone on to see the world, literally. She had been to Japan, walked on the Great Wall of China, sailed on the Seine, and watched bear hunting for salmon in the wilds of Alaska. She had read every book her hand could find and educated herself in a way that rivaled the best colleges, and she spoke with an eloquence that made you stop and wonder which royal family claimed her heritage. She had married 2 husbands and mothered 5 children, and when the tangles of life became too much to bear, she had run from them too. Delia ran, because to stand still was to face the demons in her mind, the scars of her childhood that had never healed. And now that her body was imprisoned inside these walls where frail old people had to be wheeled in to get some sun every day, she ran in her mind. Looking at the little old ladies, heads bent low as their weak necks could no longer support their heads, she proudly walked by, doing laps around the room, shaking her head. "Not for me," she said, and continued her walk out to the garden, safely tucked away behind these walls. Delia hadn't known much happiness in her lifetime. Some thought she had been manic depressive her entire life, what was now referred to as bipolar. The voices in her head told her she was miserable, and so miserable she was. Now looking at her aging body in the mirror, she shook her head in anguish. Her perfect perky breasts were now sagging sacks. She had lost the battle with gravity a long, long time ago. Naked she came into this world, and no doubt they would take her out naked. She couldn't quite remember when she first noticed that her mind was slipping away. She had always been forgetful, even as a child. She just assumed it was because she had had too many things on her mind, too many wheels turning in too many different directions simultaneously. Perhaps she first realized it when she couldn't recall her favorite granddaughter's name, or when her search for her diamond necklace ended in the freezer where it was neatly packaged with the frozen spinach. It irritated the hell out of her. She was an excellent cook and had always used only the freshest, most natural ingredients in her cooking, even during the early days when she cooked for a family of 7. She exercised regularly, did her crossword puzzles, and took her supplements. At 78, her body was healthier than most 60-year-olds. But it was her mind that she feared was slowly going south. She used to joke about it, but now it wasn't funny anymore. She wrote everything down in her notebook, and she kept exhaustive lists of things to do. Surely she couldn't be losing her mind. It just wasn't fair. Now staring at herself in the mirror, her uncombed hair framing her small face, she was a stranger to herself. "Good morning, Miss Delia." A nurse had entered her room. This was her own private space, and she guarded it jealously. She didn't like intruders who entered without first asking permission. After all, good manners dictated that this be done, and she was not one to tolerate bad manners. Delia stared straight ahead without answering. "Miss Delia, are you okay?" Nurse Jones was very familiar with Delia and her ever-changing moods. She had been her nurse for the past 2 years. She knew that most days Delia was pleasant and cooperative enough, but there were those days when she would lash out at anyone and everyone who dared to encroach on her space. Nurse Jones approached with caution. "It's a beautiful morning, and I saw your door open. I called, but you didn't answer, so I thought I would come in and check to be sure you're doing okay. Sorry if I intruded on your privacy." Well, at least she had the manners to apologize, Delia thought. "Have you seen my baby?" Delia asked. Nurse Jones's answer was right on the money. "Your baby is in bed, Miss Delia. She's sleeping." Delia had several dolls, all of which she now thought were her children. But the newest doll, the one her husband brought recently, was the one she referred to as her baby. It was a Chinese doll, a doll that looked like her. Same curly black hair, slightly slanted eyes, and light brown skin. "She's very tired, you know. She was up all night crying. I don't know why, but she wouldn't sleep. Can you take her temperature for me? Perhaps she has a fever." Delia's maternal instincts never wavered. She may not remember her real children, but this doll was as real to her as the children she bore, and she knew enough to care for it. Nurse Jones put the thermometer under the doll's arm, waited the appropriate length of time, and then responded. "Your baby is fine, Miss Delia. She just may have a bit of colic. Why don't you let me comb your hair and dress you up so you can take the baby for a walk?" "I can dress myself just fine." Delia turned and marched into the bathroom. Truth be told, Delia could no longer dress herself just fine. She no longer knew the difference between underwear and outerwear, sometimes wearing them in the wrong sequence. But regardless of what dementia had taken from her, it had not taken away her defiant, independent spirit. "If you want to dress someone so badly, why don't you go dress yourself?" Delia shut the bathroom door as she took her toothbrush down from the shelf. Her husband had lovingly installed a shelf above the bathroom sink, on which he had placed a few pictures of Delia and her family alongside an artificial plant. The pictures had long since disappeared, and the plant had been removed from its small pot and placed on the side of the bathtub. The pot now housed her toothbrush. Nurse Jones took the opportunity to put away Delia's clothes, the clothes Delia had left on the side chair. She laid out a fresh pair of slacks and Delia's favorite blouse, the one with the bright pink flowers. Then she quietly left the room. 2 hours later, emerging from her room, fully dressed in her slacks and her floral blouse with the buttons undone, exposing her undershirt, baby in hand, Delia began her daily walk, round and round the makeshift walking track that ran around the perimeter of the building. She passed the old ladies in the wheelchairs, head hung low, getting their daily dose of vitamin D and UV rays. "Not for me," she said as she quickly passed them by. "Never for me."